Ngayong araw sa Thinking Out Loud with Rafi Alunan, poverty o kahirapan, saan-saan ba sa Pilipinas ang mga pinakamahihirap na bayan? Paano ba ang buhay nila? Kasama ang pamamahala sa mga lugar na ito. Tumutok dahil pag-uusapan din ang political dynasty sa episode na ito at paano naapektuhan ang mga buhay ng kanilang nasasakupan. Panauhin si Dean Ronald Mendoza of Ateneo School of Government. Makinig sa DZRH Radio Nationwide. Manood sa DZRH News Television, sa DZRH News Television Facebook at YouTube live channel at www.dzrhnews.com. Eto na, pakinggan, tumutok, panoorin, Thinking Out Loud with Rafi Alunan.
Magandang araw sa iyo, Dean Ronald Mendoza ng Ateneo School of Government. Welcome sa Thinking Out Loud with Rafi Alunan.
Pleasure to be here.
Ron, 2 weeks ago or a week ago, you were in the Senate at kinumbida kayo doon in relation to federalism at saka yung anti-dynasty law. At I was able to catch portions of your discussions on the anti-dynasty law at merong lumabas sa social media. Itong anti-dynasty law ay pinag-uusapan dahil sa the Constitution bans political dynasties but calls on the lawmakers to define it. So yun ang starting point natin. What to you, how did you define or how do you define a political dynasty?
Well, yung basic definition ng isang dynasty ay isa siyang elected official na may kamag-anak in a position in the past or in a elected position in the present. So, lalabas, may dalawang types of dynasties. Yung dynasty na lumalabas na dynasty siya dahil meron siyang dating kamag-anak na elected official din. Or dynasty siya dahil may kasabay siyang kamag-anak na elected official while they are serving in that position. So, we took pains to define dynasties kasi nga yun yung call ng ating constitution to define dynasties, which our Congress was never able to do. And our presentation in the Senate focused on the two types, yung thin dynasty, payat na dynasty.
Yung kasunod, may kasunod.
Oo, magkakasunod lang sila.
Oo.
Medyo maayos yung pagkasunod-sunod, pero hindi more than one. At any point in time, iisa lang siya.
Isa lang.
Right? So, si lolo, ipapasa sa anak. Si anak, ipapasa kay apo.
Okay.
Ganong klase. Teen dynasty yan. Meron din kaming na-identify na tinatawag na fat o matabang dynasty. Yun naman ay sabay-sabay silang tumatakbo. So, sunod-sunod versus sabay-sabay. According to our research, yung sabay-sabay talaga ang malaking problema. Kasi, pag nagsabay-sabay ka na, yung checks and balances ng ating democracy, medyo humihina na yun. Kasi si governor, meron na siyang kamag-anak sa provincial board. And in our local government code, provincial board is supposed to be the check and balance to the governor. Meron ding kamag-anak si governor sa mga mayor. So yung fairness ng allocation niya ng resources. Sino uunahin niya? Doon sa 5 mayor, 3 doon, anak niya. So,
doon pa lang conflict of interest
doon pa lang conflict of interest na. So, alam natin na sa mga ganong klaseng sitwasyon, hindi na yung poverty o development yung basehan ng pag-allocate ng pera, kundi yung kamag-anak mo para mas malakas yung kanyang staying power sa politika. When that happens, our anti-poverty programs, our development programs are necessarily watered down. Kasi hindi siya kasing bisa ng nakatarget talaga sa kung saan kailangan. So, nagkaka-mistargeting, nagkakaroon ng lack of fairness, nawi-weaken ng checks and balances. Sa mga probinsya naman na halos yung top positions, iisang pamilya na lang ang humahawak, medyo may impunity possibility na rin. Ibig sabihin, pwede na talaga nilang abusuhin yung posisyon. Marami ng corruption, minsan nagiging violent pa sila, minsan may private army.
Hawak na nila yung mga local authorities.
Exactly, hindi na makakilos.
Yung local criminal justice system.
Exactly. Minsan pati yung mga kawani natin ng gobyerno katulad ng pulis. Hirap silang kumilos kasi may isang malaking political clan doon. So sa mga ganong klaseng sitwasyon, sinabi namin in our Senate testimony na napakahirap isiping democratic pa rin yung space na yun. Mga citizens natin, baka hindi na sila makapagsalita. Yung mga opposition dun sa ganong klaseng probinsya, baka nanganganib na yung buhay nila o wala na silang boses. Tapos yung checks and balances ng ating democracy, napakahina na doon sa mga ganong klaseng sitwasyon.
Okay, it's been 30 years since the 1987 Constitution. 2017 na ngayon. So 30 years na ang lumipas. Hanggang ngayon, wala pa tayong anti-dynasty law.
Yes.
Okay? And that's because yung mga nakaupo sa Congress, many of them belong to political dynasties. So, obvious yun, ano? Kaya't wala pa tayong anti-dynasty law. How can we break it? How can we persuade them to adhere to the Constitution and be lawful?
Yeah. Meron po tayong dalawang theory of change, kumbaga. Paano ba natin babaguhin yung sitwasyon na yan? Ang unang theory of change ay palakasin natin ang middle class. Kasi lumalakas po yung dynasty sa mga lugar na kung saan napakahina ng mga pamilya, napaka-vulnerable ng mga pamilya, maraming mahirap.
Related to poverty.
Related to poverty. So, the first angle for intervention is economic. Bring progress, bring jobs, bring true independence to citizens so they are no longer dependent on patrons. Mababasag natin yung patron-client relationship na sinasabi. At yung history na dumidepende ang mga pamilya over time, maaring lumakas sila o lumakas yung next generation to some extent na hindi na sila kailangang ganung kadependent sa isang malakas na patron. Right? At pag lumakas sa middle class, doon din magagaling ang mga alternative leader. Doon din magagaling ang youth leaders na mag-iisip ng panibagong pamamalakad. So that's the first one. That's the first way to address it. And I think we're doing that
Who
right
will
now.
bring the seeds of economic development to those provinces? Yes. At sino ang hawak ng development program?
That's a good question. In fact, the challenge in that kind of a theory of change is it's central and local governance that's supposed to work together para palakasin ang middle class, palakasin ang mga pamilya para makaahon sila sa kahirapan. That is not always working. As you know, you are the preeminent expert serving in DILG. Central and local dynamics do not always work out so well. Minsan, yung central, kasi nakita niya corrupt yung nasa local, pangungunahan na niya. Sasabihin niya, ito ang pag-target ng kung nasa ng mahirap, ito ang pag-deliver ng mga programa. Hindi ko nahayaan sa kamay mo to kasi alam ko na hindi pag-angat ng kahirapan ang hinahanap mo. Baka gusto mo lang na mag-stay in power for a much longer period of time.
Ron, sa panahon namin, because since you mentioned DILG,
sure.
Sa panahon namin, yung mga local development councils were hard at work.
Yes.
From the regional level all the way down to the municipal, ano? Pati yung mga peace and order councils,
right.
Hard at work na rin yun.
Right.
And they were working very closely.
Right.
Kasi without peace and order, walang development. How is it today, based on your research?
Well, I could ask you the same thing. I think you're quite knowledgeable on that topic as well. I think today it's really in bad shape.
Napabayaan.
Napabayaan kasi yung ganong klaseng seamless collective action and cooperation na dapat sana nagtutulungan central, local towards a common goal, which is poverty reduction, development, citizens empowerment. Ang nangyayari in the areas where you have poor governance, in the provinces where you have warlords or political clans na matatabang dynasty yan at pang-aabuso na yung kanilang ginagawa, hindi maganda yung collaboration or collective action between central and local. And these seamless mechanisms, humina siya, pumayat siya, tapos lumalakas yung concentration of political power sa political clans. Diyan sa mga lugar na yan, talagang nagtutunggali yung central at local to the extent na reformist yung central. Pero minsan may corrupt din sa central nagko-collude sila. So collaboration in a very bad way, right? So I think those are the stories, and it's not just about this administration per se, but the different administrations have had challenges on this front.
It's also possible na matino naman yung sa local government pero bad influence yung central.
Exactly, exactly. So, ang nangyayari po, nagtuturuan sila. Nagtuturuan. Ikaw may kasalanan, Imperial Manila eh. Si Imperial Manila naman, titingnan yung local political clan, fat dynasty kayo dyan. Ano ang ginagawa nyo sa pera? Black hole yung lugar ninyo. Saan nagpunta ang pera? Billion ang ginasta namin dyan.
Professor Ron, you showed a slide sa Senado. Top 15 ba yun o top 10?
Top 15.
Top 15. Did you bring it?
Sure, it's here.
Can we show it? Can we zoom in? Can we get the camera to zoom in? Could you talk about it?
Yan yung mga 15 poorest provinces sa ating bansa. Isa-isahin ko lang po para doon sa ating mga tagapakinig.
Can we enlarge this?
Sure. Ang number 1 po ay si Lanao del Sur. Pangalawa po ay si Maguindanao. Pangatlo is Northern Samar. Pang-apat is Sarangani. Pang-5, Sulu. Pang-6, Bukidnon. Pang-7, Siquijor. Pang-8, Zamboanga del Norte. Pang-9, Sultan Kudarat. Pang-10, Agusan del Sur. Number 11, Western Samar. Number 12, Eastern Samar. Number 13, Masbate. Number 14, Negros Oriental. Number 15, Lanao del Norte. Dito po sa mga mahirap na probinsyang to, pinakamahihirap po itong probinsya sa buong bansa. Lumalabas po dyan na yung dynastic share ng mga pinuno, yung pong share na mga pinuno na galing sa political clans, ay napakatataas. At sinabi nga po nila sa amin, kami ba may kasalanan yan? Nagkataon lang na nandiyan kami sa mahirap na lugar. So sinasabi po nila sa amin, correlation is not causation. Na totoo naman pong kailangang pag-ibahin po yung analysis niyan. Pero doon po sa aming pag-aaral, lumalabas, at saka sa iba na rin pong pag-aaral na nababasa namin, with that kind of political concentration of power, governance is really weakened and development outcomes are also weakened. So what happens is, as the dynasties are becoming fatter, which is really just an indicator that your political competition is becoming weaker, and therefore political accountability is becoming weaker, poverty is increasing.
I noticed, Professor Ron, that out of the 15 areas there, or 15 provinces, 9 out of 15 are Mindanao.
Yes.
And yung mga probinsya na yan sa Mindanao are either affected by insurgency, the communist insurgency, or by secessionism, or banditry, no?
Yes.
Including terrorism. And would you say that the reason why there is political warlordism is because sila rin ang ino-organize ng central government to be able to address the insurgency and the peace and order problems that they have in their province. And if that is the case, how can the central government improve, because they're already in a black hole, no? How can they get out of that cycle and still remain focused on peace and order, but without the dynasties working against the objectives of the central government, which is national development, peace and order, etc.
Poverty reduction.
Poverty reduction. What would be your prescription there?
I completely agree with the assessment. In fact, may kasabihan po yung mga Amerikano, better the devil you know. Dito po sa mga lugar na to, which are poor governance environments, talagang napakahirap ng mga lugar. The institutions are so weak. Peace and order is also quite weak. Government has been left to choose pragmatic strategies to try and secure peace and order. And sometimes the degree of pragmatism that our government undertakes, it also creates its own demons, its own problems, which become bigger problems in the future. So you're right. The challenge is for us to break out of this low-level development trap. It's actually conflict and underdevelopment trap, and choose a way out of it so that when you choose agents of the state, when you choose agents of reform and change, you also discipline them. You don't let them become your future problems.
You need a disciplinarian for that.
Well, the disciplinarian in most democracies are institutions. They are not single people.
But with the present state of our weak institutions, how do you go about strengthening that when the solutions required are immediate?
Yes. Well, as you know, many schools of government teach this. You need both strong institutions and accountable leadership. And ideally, when those are put together, then you are able to produce good outcomes. Because as you said, yung mismong institution, medyo mahirap, so you cannot just rely on it to act as the disciplining device. Kasi may mga batas naman tayo, pero walang nagpapatupad.
So you need a strong leader to be able to carry it out.
An accountable, I should say, an accountable leader.
A strong, accountable leader.
Yes, yes.
And I'd like to lead to the next point, which is, meron pa tayong martial law sa Mindanao.
Yes.
Right? But while most people in Mindanao say, you know, we like it, we support it, I also hear voices saying it's not enough. Right? They're not really exercising martial law, but there is martial law. This is one instance where martial law could be utilized to be able to control the political dynasties, probably break up private armies, and then use the powers of the central government to bring in the seeds of development. What do you think?
Well, I am torn. Honestly, when we talk about martial law, it saddens me that we are brought to the point that we need a blunt instrument to resuscitate our democracy. I do not think that martial law in any way gives the best impression of our democracy and our country today in 2018. It saddens me that we have to go back to such a blunt instrument in order to take control and bring back order into parts of the country. Having said this, I understand the sentiments of our fellow Filipinos in Mindanao. Pagod na sila dun sa pang-aabuso, impunity in the different places. So I do understand where they're coming from. What I would hope to see is that martial law is a stopgap. It cannot be a prolonged intervention. We need to go back to the basics of strong institutions, bring back the past ambition of citizens' empowerment, implement the law. Essentially, if you actually implemented the law, many of the fat political clans would face either murder charges or corruption charges. And they would be banned from public office if we actually did this well.
Yeah.
So in fact, I'm torn because if one thinks that we need martial law in order to do that, I would argue that wasn't that just something that we needed to implement, that the laws are already there?
The thing is, the local guys out there are not implementing.
Yes.
So
well,
it required central intervention.
To go back,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Pero meron naman pong central interventions that are now stepping in. I know some mayors were even investigated by NAPOLCOM, for instance, for their role in illegal drugs, for instance. Those types of checks and balances are actually good for central-local relations as long as they are accountable, transparent, and not abused.
Yeah. Well, I brought that up because the martial law that was installed in Mindanao was meant to just contain terrorism, insurgency, and crime and corruption, especially drugs, because they're interconnected.
Yes.
And that has run wild over the past, I'd say, 10, 15 years. So to excise it, to excise the cancer, you need tough measures, no?
Right.
But I agree with you. It's got to be temporary. Yeah. And once the cancer has been excised, then we have to undertake reform programs that would effectively strengthen institutions. No question about it. But I think that the kind of martial law that's being applied in Mindanao is still limited because it could be applied to improve the state of development in Mindanao. At this stage, one can say that in areas where martial law is supposed to actually exists, but there's no problem of insurgency, then they should use their powers to focus on development rather than on peace and order. Now, which of those provinces of the 9 in Mindanao don't have the problem of insurgency and terrorism where martial law could be used to focus on development?
Well, again, I would think that it's not necessarily martial law that would be the main instrument for it. Ideally, tinutulungan natin yung development ng lahat ng mga probinsya, but in different ways. And that's how I interpret your observation. In some places where captured yung local government, then obviously you might need an instrument like martial law, which is what happened in a place like Marawi.
Correct. As you know, it's the application of martial law in Mindanao is selective.
Yes.
Hindi naman blanket.
Exactly, exactly. But there are many provinces in Mindanao that could actually benefit from further development inputs, infrastructure, strengthening education, health investments. In fact, that is part of where I think the federalism discussion is coming from. Kasi nagkukulang yung resources ng pinakamahirap natin mga probinsya, samantalang yung mga mayayaman natin na lugar, katulad ng, for instance, Makati, still gets IRA.
Yes.
Do you know that Makati gets around 800 million pesos a year? And in Makati, there are so many benefits for the citizens, and they are literally swimming in revenues.
They say disproportionate distribution of the IRA.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So
and
we'll focus on that after the break.
Okay.
Reklamong totoong pinakikinggan. Reklamong talagang pinag-uusapan. Reklamong talagang tinututukan. Pinakikinggan, pinag-uusapan, tinututukan. Sama-sama, sabay-sabay at tuloy-tuloy nating tutukan si Greco sa programa Ireklamo kay Greco. Kasama si Greco. Greco Belgica, Linggo, 2:00 ng hapon. Sabayang matututukan sa DZRH News Television, DZRH Radio, DZRH News Television Facebook at YouTube live channel at dzrhnews.com. Ireklamo kay Greco.
Feeling mo ba out ka sa mga kwentuhan? Feeling mo ba left out ka sa topic? Baka di mo alam ang trending. Baka di mo pa napanood ang viral. Tuwing Sabado, 6 p.m., di ka ma-OP sa kwentuhan sa social media. Pagsasamahin ko ang mga video na viral, video na trending. Kasama niyo ako, Victor de Guzman. Ulit, Sabado, magkita-kita tayo, 6 p.m. Live sa TV, DZRH News Television at live sa social media, Facebook at YouTube sa DZRH News Television.
TNVS Trending and Viral Show. Sabado, 6 p.m. sa DZRH News Television.
This is still Thinking Out Loud with Rafi Alunan at kasama pa rin natin si Dean Ronald Mendoza. Dean, we're talking here about changing the political culture, getting rid of political dynasties, lifting the people out of poverty in these places where you have fat dynasties. May correlation between fat dynasties and poverty.
Yes.
Okay. In fact, later on, I want to examine whether yung mga tao dyan sa 15 provinces na yan are more or less, we have the same profile of OFWs abroad. Nagagaling din ba dyan sa mga probinsya na yan?
Yeah.
But basically what I'd like to ask is, human engineering is really very difficult, no? Changing the culture. Kasi kultura ito eh.
Yeah.
You know? At matagal lang nanatili yung feudalistic culture dyan sa Mindanao and the other parts of the country. But people want change today. Kasi fed up na sila eh.
Yes.
In fact, desperate na. On the other hand, there is this view na, let's educate the people, let's bring in seeds of development, take them out of poverty, and apply other solutions that actually take time. Right?
Yes.
Actually, those solutions that take time are also the enduring solutions, right? Which is what we want to happen.
Yes.
But there's the immediate demand for change, for a better life. And here's a president that understands that, knows what he's up against. He's got weak institutions to begin with, but he has strong political will. So that's what he's using now to smash the opponents of development. Right? How else can it be done at the present moment, if not through that?
Well, I think you put it very nicely. Yan po talaga yung may long game, tapos may immediate, right? The long game is really development and a strong middle class.
Yeah.
That's really the future for the country. Culture will change with a strong middle class.
Yeah.
Less clients, less dependent households will mean less patrons kasi hindi na sila makapangyarihan over these poor provinces. Pero some of the more immediate reforms include a possible dynasty regulation law. And why do we call it a dynasty regulation law? This was my testimony at the Senate. Kasi yung anti-dynasty, napaka-anti, napaka-us against you. In fact, the way we see it is we should all try to be part of this reform, and it should be a much more positive, inclusive message. So our proposal is actually to twin the dynasty regulation with building strong political parties and put this together and call it a building inclusive democracy law.
Okay.
How would that work? Yung pag-limit ng mga fat political dynasties will actually create space for new leaders. And the strong political parties would then enable for alternative leaders to come in. And in order for it to be more politically feasible, we suggested in the Senate na dahil yung ebidensya naman nakatutok, yung pinakamasasamang examples are among the fat political clans. Yung mga thin dynasties, hindi naman masahol yung kanilang mga backgrounds eh. Hindi nandoon ang problema.
Pero meron ding poverty sa thin dynasties.
Meron din.
Pero mas mababa ang poverty rate.
Exactly. At may laban yung mga alternatives doon. Kasi sa iisang dynasty lang, hindi yung checks and balances malakas pa. So may laban pa yung demokrasya doon. Tapos,
pero doon sa fat dynasties, gaano kalala yung poverty?
Well, in our data set, doon sa pinakamahirap na lugar ng Pilipinas, nandun yung pinakamatatabang dynasty. So talagang doon sila tumataba.
So are we talking about 65% of the population that are poor or mga ganon?
Ang nangyayari po kasi ngayon, because of urbanization, many of the poor are ending up in urban areas where there's also a strong middle class.
So scattered na sila?
Scattered eh. Pero
yung naiwan doon?
Yung naiwan sa rural area, this is why context is very important. Yeah. And all of the researchers agree that context is very important. This is why we try to distinguish the thin dynasty versus the fat dynasty. Kasi dati po, dynasty is dynasty. So lahat sila masama, lahat sila parte ng problema. Na hindi naman ganun talaga yung...
There are good and bad dynasties.
Lumalabas po yung ganyang klaseng view in the sense na pagka fat dynasty, checks and balances are weak. Doon na talaga yung pinakamasahol yung mga halimbawa. So our proposal for it to be politically feasible is focus on the fat dynasties, regulate that, And our example here is an analogy.
How do you regulate?
The analogy is like a stoplight. Nandun ka po sa isang intersection. Lahat tayo gustong magsilbi, gustong dumaan sa intersection. Right? Pero, si Sec Rafi nakasakay sa tangke. Si Prof. Ron Mendoza nakasakay sa bisikleta. Yung mga iba, naglalakad lang. Yung may tangke, napakahirap na parehas ang labanan kung tangke yung dadali mo through the intersection. Lahat ng iba tatabi dyan. Right? So, hindi parehas, hindi level ang playing field. In the words of FBR himself, right? We want a level playing field in the economy. In this case, we want a level playing field in the political system. So, the analogy we want for dynasty regulation is, or that we propose, is a stoplight. Hindi natin pagbabawalan kahit sinong Pilipino na gustong magsilbi. Pwede pa rin silang magsilbi, so it does not go against your constitutional right to serve the country. What we are doing, however, is putting some order to it para lahat tayo makalusot dun sa intersection. Mas maraming Pilipino na pinuno na pwede magsilbi sa bayan.
Who will regulate?
Good question. And we can think about this in the implementation of the law, but ideally, it's a whole-of-country implementation. You will have institutions from central and local that will work together and implement this kind of a law. I understand that an invigorated COMELEC must play a role. Our judicial system may also play a role in something like this. But for me, it's really about strengthening, again, civil society in the country so that we are all monitoring this development of how we select our leaders.
How can we do that if we are going to transition to a federal form of government? Parang we're decentralizing.
Yes.
Without really breaking up the fat dynasties, no? So how can, and we're actually limiting the powers of the central government, no? So how can there be central-local collaboration when the powers of the central government will be diluted, the powers of the states will be strengthened,
yes,
and the political dynasties, the fat ones, are still there in place?
That's a very, very good question. And in fact, it's the concern of many of our citizens, including those who are supportive of federalism. I personally support federalism. I support decentralization. I support the local government code. But I am concerned, just like the rollout of the local government code, that this very good, well thought out policy will be captured by the very same people who are supposed to implement it properly. So, pag na-capture, kahit na maganda yung adhikain natin, baka pangit na maging resulta. So nakita na po natin yan sa local government code. Dito sa federalism, we're also concerned kasi napakaganda ng ambition, napakaganda ng vision ng ating mga pinuno, pero paano kung mangyari ulit yon, makapture siya? So my analysis of this situation is such that some people think of strengthening political parties and strengthening dynasty regulation as the precondition for really ramping up deeper decentralization or federalism. You must have that first in order to be a strong breeding ground for better governance. But if you don't have that good starting point, and we study this in the schools of government all over the world, the starting point really matters. If you have a weak starting point, even if the roadmap is very, very good, makikerry natin yung weakness na yon all throughout that journey.
In other words, don't start on the wrong foot.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So the starting point must be a little stronger para may laban yung good governance.
O kasi mahaba yung journey.
Yes.
And if you start on the wrong foot, then it'll be, you know, a miserable journey.
Assuming you're still on the same trajectory.
That's correct.
Because they can take you wherever they want.
You could be derailed, no? You
exactly.
could easily be derailed. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, the other thing is, why not just smash them? Why not just use a sledgehammer and smash it and say, well, that's the end of this. If you don't want to pass a law that would regulate political dynasties because you're there, then but this is important because it's part of the Constitution and we have to carry out our mandate. Just smash it.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of sympathy for that view. I myself am for a scalpel approach. This is a cancer in our democracy. And we excise, and you used the analogy earlier, you excise the cancer, but at the same time, make the patient healthier para hindi babalik yung cancer, right? And the healthy patient is really the goal, not the removal of the cancer. Actually, it's a healthier person, right? Our goal here is not necessarily to remove anyone from office or to remove any leader, prevent any leader from serving us. In principle, that's something to be encouraged, right? Swerte nga tayo gustong magsilbi ng mga Pilipino sa kanilang kapwa kababayan. Pero ang problema is kung isa na lang grupo ang pinagpipilian nung magsisilbi na yan at inaabuso pa nila yung pagsisilbi na yun. So, I would imagine that taking out the worst of them. Yes, taking out the worst of them, taking out the cancer is one step. Making the patient healthy is the other. And you make the patient healthy with institutional reforms like stronger political parties, better education and health for young people, continued education by civil society, church, and others, grassroots movements that give citizens more empowerment. This is what will make the democracy healthy.
Naalala ko tuloy yung ginagawa namin sa panahon ni Presidente Ramos eh. Kasi meron kaming Oplan paglalansag.
Right.
Dinalansag namin yung mga warlords. No?
Which is the scalpel.
O, yun ang scalpel. May Oplan pagbabago, which is reforms. No?
Which is the making the patient healthy.
Correct. And then we had all the different institutions collaborating. Itawag namin doon completed staff work, teamwork, unity, etc.
Yes.
And we focused on the development councils and peace and order councils.
Yes.
No? Agents, the institutions of government were members there, as well as members of civil society, organized from the region, national all the way down to municipal. Sayang, we only had 6 years.
May I just say, well,
and I was just going to say that we don't have a culture that a culture that continues or sustains. Whatever reforms we put in place, when a new administration comes in, wala. Wiped out lahat yan. Start all over again. Sayang ang oras, sayang yung panahon, at sayang lang yung pera na ginastos.
Well, just to slightly disagree, many of the reforms that you started are still alive right now.
Oh, that's
and there
good
are
to
many
know.
of us who are fighting to keep them.
Okay.
In fact, the many examples of that cohesive whole of government approach is really how we should do it. But you will notice also that there is less smashing and more building under FBR. This, I think, is what our people want to see. Kasi the smashing part, while it is tempting and it to some extent may be exhilarating for those of us who are fed up, what we really need to do to make the patient healthy and build this democracy is building. And that's what that administration really fought for.
When we smashed, we were using a sniper rifle.
Yes.
It wasn't a shotgun.
Yeah.
So piling-pili to deliver the message.
It wasn't scattershot.
It wasn't scattershot. And it was we applied just enough persuasive power to influence the situation.
Yes. So to me, I have actually much more respect for the builders than the smashers.
Yeah. Well, our point of view then was if there were certain areas that needed to be rebuilt. Yeah, and it was very difficult to rebuild from the foundations that were there already, weakened foundations. We had to break the foundations and start all over again. Yeah.
When you have absolutely no choice at all anymore and you need the space to build institutions, yes.
Ron, let's just go back. Many of the residents of these provinces moved out and settled in many urban areas, Metro Manila, Cebu, Davao, etc., to look for a better life.
Yes.
Would you say that the same profile can be found among the OFWs abroad?
Actually, this is a very good question at a very poorly studied area. Migration internally and externally for the country. Yeah. Migration itself is part of the development process. Migration can be an instant poverty-reducing activity because you're moving from a place where you have no job to a place where you do have a future.
Right.
Right? The problem, however, is if you are emptying out your best people in a poor area, which is typically those migrants are the ones who have the most skills, the most capabilities. So if you are emptying them out, paalis sila ng paalis, pahina ng pahina yung lugar. So part of the challenge for us also is, even though migration is of course in a way a human right for many of our citizens, and they are able to better their lives with this, we must create incentives for many of our middle class to stay in these areas, make investments, create jobs. Maybe the OFWs can go back and actually help the provinces where they originally came from and change the dynamics of both economics and politics so that it has a better future.
Yeah, there are two questions kasi that arise from that. One is, if the population is being drained,
yes,
because they want out,
yes,
how can those who remain, and basically they're the weaker ones,
yes,
fight the dynasties, right? That's one. The other is, for as long as those dynasties remain firm and are the cause of, more poverty, corruption, crime, and impunity, no?
yes,
that deepens the image of Mindanao as a place to avoid, right? And so how can we convince investors
to go there?
to go there, right? So it's really a problem. And it's a Gordian knot that we have to untie. And that's perhaps, if I may just venture the opinion, that's what the administration had in mind.
Yes.
But I just wish that they utilize their martial powers more to be able to widen the doors for development.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
right now it's just focused on terrorism.
Yes. Well, to be fair, and I do know the economic plans of the administration. We've tried to be helpful in crafting some of them. Ambition 2040 is one of the...
That's a fantastic vision,
yes,
right there.
And it is now underpinned by an actual development plan, concrete plan. The infrastructure plan is good. The tax reforms are also helpful. The objective to bring more development outside of Imperial Manila,
yes,
and spread the economic dynamism across the countryside is a good one. If you ask me, we only have 2 or 3 main engines of growth in the country, which is really where the jobs are created and concentrated, and where the middle class is residing.
Yeah.
You have Southern Luzon, you have Metro Manila itself. Maybe you can consider Metro Iloilo and Metro Cebu as also areas, Metro Davao. But we need more engines of growth. And those are really the places that will continue to attract our talented, skilled young people who will then become the middle class, the emerging middle class in these areas, and perhaps go back to their home provinces at some point and lead the change for more investments and maybe even political reforms. So I think that's the dynamic.
You know, you mentioned excellent programs, but they have, they have long gestation periods, or they have a time frame where reaching the final goal will probably cover 2 or 3 more administrations, no, down the line. So I suppose one of the yardsticks that the Duterte administration will have to use to gauge whether they're into good governance, no, is to make sure that they put in place people that can continue.
Yes.
Continuity has always been a problem, as you know, right? We've never been able to find that formula to make sure that we put the right people in place after each administration, right? I hope that they can break the cycle this time.
Yes. In fact, I very much agree. And continuity will be underpinned by strong institutions. The selection of our people in the technocracy, the selection of our leaders, our elected officials, these are the institutions that need to be revived in the country,
Yeah.
so that we send our best and brightest literally to serve us.
Professor Ron, on that note, thank you very much.
My pleasure.